let's get into Donald Trump and his declaration of a no-fly zone. He took to social media to talk about, he took to social media basically to say, look, man, hope y'all don't forget, in Venezuela, we ain't letting nobody swing through there, which is actually a problem. So let me show y'all the tweet. Bum, bum, bum. Everybody can see that? Cool. To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump. Pop quiz, everybody. When you declare an area a no-fly zone, what does that essentially mean? It essentially means you are declaring war on another nation. I don't know if you all recall, but whenever, I want to say it was either Obama or Trump, don't quote me, it was one of the two, or maybe even both, they actually tried to declare a no-fly zone over Syria. There was a push to declare a no-fly zone in Syria, and I remember everybody losing their minds. There was international condemnation of the U.S. trying to declare a no-fly zone over Syria because everyone knew that that means you are declaring war. And in a situation like this, which we'll get into in a second, where a president is doing so unilaterally, they're trying to bypass Congress. And as we all know, a president can't declare war without congressional approval. And this is effectively Trump trying to bypass Congress to declare a war that once again can't win. Why is it considered a declaration of war? I think it's important to discuss that because somebody's like, well, if they're just saying that you can't fly over there, you're not like shooting anybody, you're not killing anybody. I don't understand why the president can't. Okay, first of all, if you declare a no-fly zone, ladies and gentlemen, you have to enforce the no-fly zone. How do you enforce a no-fly zone? You have to enforce a no-fly zone by shooting shit down, by putting boots on the ground, by using your Navy to destroy whoever may violate the no-fly zone that you are declaring. Basically, it requires a hot war. It requires a military engagement, which is why, and that's why also, by the way, Trump doesn't have approval. He doesn't have authority to do this. He doesn't have authority. From the declaration of war side, he needs Congress, but from the international side, he needs the UN to approve a no-fly zone, and obviously, the country itself. Let me show you. So, one second, everybody. Oh, don't cover my face. Hold up. Cover my pretty face. There you go. So in this article, they talk about it. Trump wants Venezuelan airspace closed, but international law stands in the way. The U.S. President Donald Trump took to social media on Saturday to declare the entire airspace above Venezuela should be considered closed. The post was the latest escalation in the standoff between Mr. Trump and Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro, sparking concerns the U.S. could be preparing to strike the South American nations. Justified concerns, by the way. But does the U.S. president have the power to close another country's airspace? Let's dive in. You already know what Trump said. Can Trump close another nation's airspace? Not officially. By international law, every country has complete and exclusive sovereignty over the airspace above its territory. That means nations only have legal authority over their own airspaces, and the U.S. cannot close Venezuela's airspace. However, airlines and pilots from the U.S. and abroad may take Trump's post as advice not to fly in the region. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, give me 1 second. If I'm not mistaken, there was actually just, for those of you who are curious where that rule comes from. Yeah, I'm not crazy. So the Chicago Convention of 1944, which formed the foundation of global aviation rules, establishes that every country has complete and exclusive sovereignty over the airspace above its territory. It's the fundamental principle that means the United States cannot legally shut down Venezuelan airspace or declare a no-fly zone over another country without UN approval or an active military conflict involving its own forces. So, what does that likely mean? Because even the article says, like, it's probably giving advice, don't go there. So if there isn't allegedly an active military conflict happening at the moment in Venezuela, what does it probably mean? That there will be one shortly. That's likely what's happening. Because you don't declare an airspace, or you don't declare no-fly zone, excuse me, without the intention of fighting a battle, without the intention of fighting a war. That's just not how it works. But it gets deeper. Because at first I'm thinking like, that's my logical conclusion. My logical conclusion is what? It's like, yo, man, if you're declaring a no-fly zone, that's war. And I'm like, but they're not going to be dumb enough to make an announcement that there is an imminent war, an intention to declare war on Venezuela. Like, that's not what Trump's administration is going to do, because they would be giving an advance warning that they plan on going to war over false pretense after breaking several international laws to get to this point, right? All the escalation strictly and solely on behalf of the U.S. has been illegal. I mean, it's bombing fishing boats. Some of the fishing boats aren't even Venezuelan. Some of them aren't even on the Venezuelan coast. They're just out in international waters, and they're just like, boop. So I'm thinking like, yo, okay, that's just Niko's conclusion. Yeah, except for, it isn't just Niko's conclusion. Here's Congresswoman Salazar, ladies and gentlemen.
President. She says, no, you cannot run. Politically speaking, according to this law, that other law.
Instead, you got corruption charges.
Whatever. And then she says, okay, no problem. I'm not running as president. Let me put this nice gentleman in Mundo Gonzalez.
How long before this happens? What is your prediction? Before Christmas?
Imminent. Because
we're on the verge. You're saying within days we're going to see something happen.
Because this is what we did with Iran, that we gave ample notice to their commercial airlines. Do not overfly the Venezuela. That's exactly what the president has done. And now this is not going to be hard. 80% of the Venezuelans voted for the opposition.
80% of the Venezuelans voted for the opposition, everybody. Oh, man. Well, they be living in the fantasy world. So I need y'all to understand something just really quick as a brief aside. If 80% of a country voted for the opposition in any situation, I guarantee you, whatever president, whoever that person is who thinks they might be president, if the people wanted them out, that person would be gone, because there is no situation where 80% of a country opposes a president and he just stays in power. And also his party runs the table basically in the legislative branch. It doesn't work like that. but they repeat these lies on live television. Some old motherfucker watching Fox and Friends actually believes this because Fox, they're just entertainment. They're not interested in telling the truth. And there are people who really believe 80% of the opposition voted for the opposition candidate. Excuse me, 80% of the people voted for the opposition candidate. There are people who believe that. Despite the fact that when Maduro tried to take them to court to prove, like, hey, man, let's go to court. Let's go to court and we can figure it out. I got no problem doing that. Y'all think that I cheated? Let us verify. And they were like, no, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? Don't y'all think y'all won? Yeah, but no, I don't want to do that. And it's also weird that she says it'll be easy to conduct strikes, to intervene, to go to war with Venezuela, because 80%. Do y'all remember what happened when Juan Guaido tried to overthrow Maduro? Y'all remember how that, I mean, bro, it was embarrassing. And the last time there was like some coup attempt, it was a little bit after Juan Guaido. Bro, people showed up to the palace to defend Maduro. They weren't, like, I don't understand why why does the US, these politicians, these fucking gusanos, these fake ass want to be like, oh yeah, you know, we love Venezuela so much that we want people to be like, we want to invade it, destroy it, and steal all of its resources for the US because that's how much we love Venezuela, because that makes a bunch of sense. They convinced themselves that the people in Venezuela don't love Maduro, or at least think that he is better and that his party is better than the other options at the bare minimum. I don't know where they because you can't keep winning this much otherwise. It just doesn't work like that. Not when you have the most secure elections in the fucking world. But hey, think it's easy if you want to. I'm not trying to fight 4 million militia. I'm not trying to do that. Oh, but she continues. She says what we all know to be true, what we all knew to be true. And yet they keep trying to pretend it's about drugs.
You have 8 million Venezuelans in exile. We're talking about the largest reserves of oil in the world that will be doing business with the American oil companies. And that is something that I have made very sure that they understand. American companies in Venezuela for the next 100 years.
All right.
There you go. Let's listen to one more time. Let's hear that part one more time.
About the largest reserves of oil in the world that will be doing business with the American oil companies. And that is something that I have made very sure that they understand. American companies in Venezuela for the next 100 years. All right.
Wow. Look at that patriotism. So I was told over and over and over again, it was about stopping drugs from leaving Venezuela and coming into the United States. It's actually kind of funny because in the defense of this offensive on behalf of the United States, intervening in Venezuela, she didn't even once mention the drug trafficking, at least in that. Like, she was like, yeah, nah, oil reserves. American companies in Venezuela for the next 100 years. Not autonomy for Venezuela for the next 100 years, not economic prosperity by, from, and for Venezuelans. Nope, American companies in Venezuela for the next 100 years. Imagine like courting being somebody's bitch. Imagine courting an imperialist nation trying to steal your resources and pretending like you're on the side of the people. She's like, 8 million Venezuelans are living in exile. No, 8 million Venezuelans chose to leave the country for various reasons, by the way. Not all Venezuelans who left the country left because they don't like Maduro. It's because they understand the impact of US sanctions on the country and are trying to seek more opportunity elsewhere. Bro, we have a bunch of Venezuelans in Brazil. And to be real, a lot of the Venezuelans who moved to Brazil instead of moving to the US, you know why they moved to Brazil instead? Because they still don't like the US. They're like, yeah, I left Venezuela because I wanted a better life for myself, but I'd be damned if I go to the US to do it, basically. They prefer living in Brazil. They're not going to like those gusanos, those rich, wealthy Venezuelans who go to Miami, go to New York, even California. They don't like them. They're not part of that clique. So yeah, there might be 8 million exiled, but that isn't the same thing. No, excuse me, there might be 8 million people who make 8 million Venezuelans who left Venezuela, but that doesn't mean they're exiled. And it doesn't mean that they were forced to leave. And Maduro isn't forcing anybody to leave. Now, if you're breaking a law and engaging in treason, he might arrest your ass. But outside of that, you don't have 8 million Venezuelans exiled. But these people, they just get on TV and just start lying. But it was supposed to be about drug trafficking. That's what we were told. And whenever we said it was about the oil, y'all were like, oh my God, why are y'all defending a narco dictator? But no, it's clearly about the oil. I told y'all. Because, okay, Trump greenlighted a CIA op. Not even what, a week or two ago? I think it might have been maybe 2 weeks ago. Like 2 days later, an oil factory explodes in Venezuela, or there's an explosion there. It's not completely destroyed, but it was a massive explosion. It was sabotage. Okay, that same oil factory just so happened to be the oil factory that Russia had begun conducting its operations from the agreement that Venezuela and Russia had put together regarding refining their oil. Okay, and it was done right as, like this is after the CIA operation, a couple days later, explosion, and between Trump greenlighting the CIA operation and the explosion, Russia and Venezuela agreed to extend their relationship, extend this agreement for oil refinement, for Russia to benefit from the oil refinement in Venezuela for 15 more years. That all happened within like 3 days of each other. And then you fast forward a week and some change. No fly zone. What? And he's like, remember there's a no fly zone. Hold on. What do you mean remember there's a no fly zone? When was there a no fly zone announced? When was that UN committee held? When was that resolution passed? When was there a vote held on that? Yeah, okay, there wasn't. That's my point. It's happening at this speed because of the oil. Because Russia is about to gain from oil, and all of a sudden, Venezuela has a way to refine the crude oil and use it to make money for Venezuela. Period. And America wants to be able to get control of it before that's the case, because once it's in full swing, it will be even harder to justify trying to overthrow Maduro and put boots on the ground in Venezuela and give the oil from Venezuela to American companies once again. It'll be even more difficult because now I got my black gold and y'all can't do shit about it. And once that oil really starts turning a profit, not just for Venezuela, but for Russia as well, we've seen what Russia is prepared to do to defend their economic interests. Look at Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They sent troops there because they're working with those 3 countries economically too. You see what I'm saying? The US is getting desperate. We also know that it's not oil, or excuse me, that it's not drugs, because, bro, Juan Orlando Hernandez. Y'all know who he is? That's the former president, ladies and gentlemen, of Honduras. a president that Trump just got done pardoning. Trump announces pardon for Honduran ex-president convicted in drug case. Yes, another one. Another one. I already talked at extensive length about Noboa and how strange the relationship is. Like the fact that Trump was like, yeah, man, I'm going to work with the Ecuadorian president Noboa to combat drug trafficking in Venezuela. Knowing that Noboa and his family is the goddamn plug. He is like, their business was how a lot of the world got their cocaine. They have a shipping business. And that's not conjecture. It's not like they were accused and we don't really know what happened. They were convicted of it. They faced punishment because of it. Noboa has power because of his family's drug business. Like that's what happened. And so we have another instance where Trump is effectively empowering and or forgiving another drug lord effectively. Oh, let's not forget Tinubu in Nigeria. Like, Tinubu is a fucking drug lord. I don't know if y'all know that, but yeah, drug lord. He's a drug lord from Chicago. The US put him in power, but before he was put in power in Nigeria, he was a drug lord in Chicago. And look at what we're doing in Nigeria now. Okay. So, Juan Orlando Hernandez was accused of receiving millions in bribes and partnering with cocaine traffickers. He was convicted in Manhattan in 2024 and sentenced to 45 years in prison. That's Hernandez. President Trump announced on Friday afternoon that he would grant a full and complete pardon to a former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who, as the center of a sweeping drug case, was found guilty by an American jury last year of conspiring to import cocaine into the United States. So I need y'all to understand why that's important, because Trump used the excuse that he's pardoning Hernandez because he was told by some sources. Because that's how it always. I was told by some people. That is literally his justification for everything. I was told by some people that it was a conspiracy by the Biden administration to arrest Hernandez, to extradite him and arrest him and put him in prison. Except for it wasn't a judge all by his lonesome that found Hernandez guilty. It was a judge that sentenced him. It was a jury that found him guilty. Those people do not work for the Biden administration. So Trump's full of shit. You could, I guess, technically make the argument, well, the sentencing was so extensive because maybe the judge is, but no, bro, if like you were receiving millions and millions and millions of dollars because you were caught trafficking, what? I think it was like 400 tons or some shit like, it was something insane, bro. Like something insane. Like, and he was working with Mexico to do it, which I guess kind of makes sense, working with Mexican cartels. Like, yeah, I guess 45 years actually makes sense. Shit, we know people who were selling weed in the US who are getting 25 to life for less. So, and didn't make millions from it at that. The news came as a shock not only to Hondurans, but also to the authorities in the United States who had built a major case and won a conviction against Mr. Hernandez. They had accused him of taking bribes during his campaign from Joaquin Guzman, the notorious former leader of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, known as El Chapo, and running his Central American country like a narco state. Yes, I know. Ironic, right? The very thing that they're accusing Maduro of with zero evidence. The judge in this case, P. Kevin Castle, had called Mr. Hernandez a two-faced politician hungry for power who masqueraded as an anti-drug crusader. An anti-drug crusader while partnering with traffickers. Damn, man. I wonder if Americans feel like they can relate to that in some way, form, or fashion. And, you know, two-faced politician, hungry for power, masquerading as an anti-drug crusader while partnering with drug traffickers. That's just a little bit too on the nose, isn't it? Yeah. And prosecutors had asked the judge to make sure Mr. Hernandez would die behind bars, citing his abuse of power connected to violent traffickers and the unfathomable destruction caused by cocaine. The prosecution stretched across Mr. Trump's first term and concluded during Joe Biden Jr.'s time. Joe Biden. I didn't know that Joe Biden was a junior. Okay, whatever. Joe Biden Jr.'s time as president. In the end, Mr. Hernandez was sentenced to 45 years in prison in federal district court in Manhattan, capping what prosecutors had presented as a sprawling conspiracy. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where Mr. Hernandez was tried, declined to comment, but a Drug Enforcement Administration agent who worked on the investigation, DEA, into Mr. Hernandez and spoke anonymously because he was not authorized to speak publicly about the matter, called the pardon lunacy. Now, you know it's bad when someone from the DEA come out and is like, that nigga guilty. So we all know the DEA is corrupt as hell. They do everything in their power to protect drug traffickers, politicians involved in it, et cetera, et cetera. And a DEA agent was like, nah, dog, this man guilty. So you got Trump, who supposedly wants Maduro out of power, put a bounty on his head, is attacking fishing boats extrajudiciously without any consultation with international authorities. And at the same time, and he's doing all this supposedly because Maduro is allegedly Frank Lucas of Latin American drug trafficking. Okay. Frank Lucas is the American gangster, if you don't get the reference. But at the same time, he literally, as he declares a no-fly zone, he's about to attack Venezuela, supposedly because of drugs, even though we know it's about oil. As he's doing all this, he has the audacity to pardon, ladies and gentlemen, to pardon someone found guilty, a president found guilty of drug trafficking, a president also, by the way, who managed to skirt his constitution in Honduras because they're only allowed to actually have one term. They do have term limits in Honduras. They're only supposed to have one term. This guy was able to skirt the Constitution and serve 2 terms, and the only one who's ever been able to do it before and since. He skirted the Constitution. International observers were like, yeah, nah, dog. This shit, it's a fake ass election. These results are not real. Really, but he was probably, the US is notorious for engaging, for throwing elections in Honduras. So that's not a surprise. And what's crazier is that Trump, so he knows that this dude and his party are corrupt. He knows that this party is known for partnering with traffickers and cartels. And Trump makes an announcement on social media that he plans on doing whatever he can to help influence the outcome in Honduras. The elections, by the way, took place yesterday, and they're starting to check out they're starting to receive results today. But we all know what help the outcome actually means, because Ben Norton actually does a great job explaining what we all know to be true whenever something looks suspect, whenever the U.S. gets involved in somebody else's business. He said, this is very suspicious. The betting website Polymarket tends to be very accurate in predicting election outcomes. That is true. For the last 2 weeks, Honduras's U.S.-backed right-wing drug cartel-linked presidential candidate Nasri Tito Asfura had extremely low odds, hovering around 10%. But suddenly, after the polls closed on election night, around 8 p.m. local time, his chances shot up from just 9% to 93%. It's the stuff of movies, ladies and gentlemen. How inspirational. This came after Honduras' left-wing ruling Libre Party published leaked recordings, exposed a plot by US-backed right-wing groups to steal elections by hacking the electoral system and manipulating the results. The US government has been openly meddling in Honduras' elections. Donald Trump supports Asfra and his right-wing National Party, which collaborates closely with drug cartels. So here you're seeing before the polls close, Nasra is the orange, if you can see that, the middle right here. Okay. This is after the polls closed. This is Nasra. Goes from the middle, and then we see a sharp drop, actually, which is actually kind of crazy. And then it just skyrockets. And we're supposed to believe the US had nothing to do with that, even though Trump openly announced he plans on intervening. Just saying. So, moral of the story. We're about to go to, not we, I'm not about to fight no goddamn body. But some of y'all might, some of y'all kids might. The US might, and this situation is very similar, ladies and gentlemen, to Vietnam. That's like the best comparison I can think of. We made a plethora of excuses. At the top of which I actually had to do with some drug stuff, but also what? Communism. Right? But why did we lose that war? Because they were more prepared than the US was. US soldiers did not actually care to fight in that war. That's why they had to be drafted. Those drafted damn sure didn't want to fight. There was no motivation. There was no morale. We didn't actually know what weapons, nor did we know what military capability Vietnam had at the time. We were woefully unprepared, thinking that because we painted them as a third world country with no military capability, that is actually what they were. Yeah, we were wrong. Because then you have the last reason, which is what? Terrain. Terrain that the US is completely and totally unfamiliar with, and that Vietnamese farmers could manipulate in whichever way they needed to in order to gain the advantage. And they were fighting with morale because they were defending their home. So imagine that, but in Venezuela, with what? 4 million militia, like this is separate from the military, the actual army. 4 million militia caught up and ready to scrap. 4 million trained to kill. 4 million people fighting for their home. Think about it. And if Russia is partnering with Venezuela and they have an agreement for 15 years regarding this oil supply, what do you think they're willing to do to protect it? Yeah, they probably will send soldiers, but it's beyond that. Y'all don't think that Venezuela already has weapons that the US doesn't know about? Of course they do. Iran had a supersonic missile. I mean, Israel's supposed to have the best intelligence in the world, right? And yet, piece by piece, China was able to send Iran a hypersonic missile that Israel was unable to detect, and the Iron Dome was unable to stop. And everybody was caught off guard, and that hypersonic missile is likely what caused Israel to sit the fuck down. Yeah, everybody wants to say, oh, it's because the U.S. attacked the facilities and Iran had to desist. No. It's because that hypersonic missile, like, hey, whoa, hold up. Y'all thought they had that? Yeah. And they already, and the US has already found out the hard way. Very recently, actually, Venezuela has drone capabilities that they weren't even aware Venezuela had. So imagine, why do y'all think that Maduro is acting so, like he's not like ignoring the US, but he's behaving as if like, yeah, y'all can try it. Go ahead. Try it, please. Please bring your asses in here. So but please give us a reason. Because if y'all make Maduro the president that beats the US ass, because I can't think of a Latin, I can't think of one. If y'all can think of one, please do so. If write in the comment section, write in the chat if y'all can think of one. But I can't think of a Latin American president that went toe to toe with the US and beat their ass. I can think of some that managed to expel the US, at least temporarily, that managed to overcome whatever attempts at intervention the US made. But I'm talking about toe to toe, come get some if you think you can handle it, and then just beats the US's ass. I don't think we've seen it. And if that happens, Maduro, Fidel Castro. Yeah, okay, that's true. Facts. Well, I don't know if that isn't like, because they didn't deploy. The US actually left Bautista out to dry. They hung him out. They're like, yeah, bro, you done. You lost the support of people. Like, we ain't about to dedicate more resources to this. Like, Fidel Castro fought against Bautista's forces, but like, I'm talking about full-scale invasion type shit. He ain't do that. I mean, granted, he prevented him. That deserves credit in and of itself. Avoided many assassination attempts, many attempts from the US to try and invade Cuba. Like he did stop shit before it happened. So like that deserves his credit. But I'm talking about like full scale, we going toe to toe. This war is lasting for months, if not years. Like, no, I think that Maduro would probably be the first. And I think that like Maduro would win. We wouldn't win. It's just for the same reason we wouldn't win in Iran, for the same reason we lost in Vietnam. We will not win. Sorry, but I hate to break that news to some of y'all.